The night was cold and heavy with smoke. The battlefield was quiet but not peaceful. Broken ships lay across the land like giant dead beasts. Metal still burned in places, glowing with a red light. The ground was black and wet, and the air smelled of ash and fire. A lone human walked through the ruins. His boots sank into the dirt with every slow step. His name was Daniel, but out here names did not matter. He was only a traveler, far away from home, searching for answers among the stars. His face was hidden under a helmet, and his eyes moved quickly, scanning every shadow. The silence made him uneasy. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of something waiting, something unseen. He felt it deep in his bones. Daniel lifted his rifle and moved carefully. His footsteps echoed softly on the empty metal shells of alien machines. Sparks flickered from broken wires. A strange wind blew through the ruins, carrying with it the faint sound of crying. At first he thought it was just his imagination, a trick of the mind in a place like this. But then he heard it again, soft, weak, and trembling. A cry. He stopped. The hair on his neck stood straight. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice deep but cautious. No answer came, only the faint sound of breathing. Daniel followed the sound step by step, deeper into the wreckage. The smoke grew thicker and the shadows darker. His chest felt tight. Then, from behind a broken wall of steel, something moved. He raised his rifle fast, pointing straight at the movement. A figure stepped out. Small, fragile, shaking. It was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and shining like pools of silver. She wore torn clothes covered in dust and blood. Her small hands were trembling and her thin body shivered as though she was freezing, even in the heat of the burning wreck. Daniel froze. His finger tightened on the trigger, but he did not shoot. The girl lifted her eyes to him. They were wide, filled with fear. She looked no older than 10 human years. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. Her voice was weak, broken, but clear enough to understand. "Please, please save my mom," she whispered, tears rolling down her blue cheeks. "She will die. She will die soon." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and her knees gave way. She fell forward, landing hard on the ground, her little hands gripping the dirt. She looked up again at Daniel, her silver eyes begging for mercy. Daniel lowered his rifle, though his heart was still racing. This was not what he expected. He had prepared for soldiers, for machines, for death, but not for a child, not for a desperate plea. The girl's small body shook. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to stop the cold. Her tears glistened in the faint firelight. "Where is your mother?" Daniel asked, his voice softer now. The girl lifted a trembling hand and pointed into the distance, toward the remains of a giant starship that had crashed into the earth. Its metal body was torn open, glowing faintly with red light. "She is there. Under the ship," the girl stammered. "Please, she cannot move. Please help her. They will come back. The hunters will come back." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Hunters. He had heard of them. Cruel soldiers who hunted survivors after battles, killing anyone left behind. If the girl was telling the truth, her mother was in grave danger. But was this a trap? His mind wrestled with the thought. Could the girl be leading him into danger? Could this be a trick of the enemy? He studied her face. She looked weak, too weak to lie, too innocent to plan an ambush. The fear in her eyes was real, raw and sharp. He felt it strike something deep inside him. The wind blew again, and with it came another sound. A low metallic growl, far away but moving closer. His instincts sharpened. Something was out there. Something dangerous. Daniel looked at the girl again. She was shaking harder now, her small hands clutching the dirt as though it was the only thing keeping her alive. "Please," she begged again, her voice breaking into sobs. "Save my mom. You're human. Humans are strong. You can help, please." Daniel knelt down, lowering himself so he could meet her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl blinked, tears falling faster. "Lyra," she whispered. "Lyra," Daniel repeated softly, testing the name on his tongue. Then he looked at the wreck in the distance. Smoke curled from its broken body. The ground shook slightly as if something alive still moved inside it. For a moment, Daniel thought about walking away. He had no reason to get involved. No mission to save alien children. But as he looked at Lyra, shivering and broken, he felt the weight of his own humanity press against him. He sighed. "All right, Lyra, I'll help you. Show me the way." Her eyes widened, hope flickering inside them like a small light in the dark. She stood weakly, swaying on her feet, and pointed again toward the giant starship. "Follow me," she said, her voice still shaking but stronger now, touched with hope. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle and glanced once more into the shadows around him. The silence was gone. Something was out there watching. The battlefield was no longer empty. And as Lyra led him forward deeper into the ruins, Daniel knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The wreck of the starship loomed ahead like a dying beast. Its broken body glowed faint red in the darkness. Smoke rose in thin lines, carrying the bitter smell of fire and metal. Daniel followed the little alien girl, Lyra, keeping his rifle ready and his eyes sharp. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound made his hand tighten on the trigger. Lyra walked slowly, limping on one leg. Her clothes were torn, her thin arms shaking from weakness. Still, she moved with a kind of desperate courage. She kept looking back at Daniel as if afraid he might leave her. "Are you sure your mother is alive?" Daniel asked quietly. His voice was low but steady. Lyra stopped for a moment, turned, and nodded. Her silver eyes filled with tears again. "Yeah, she is alive, but she cannot move. She is trapped. If the hunters find her first, she will die." Her words made Daniel's chest tighten. He had heard about these hunters. Ruthless alien soldiers, silent killers who swept through battlefields after the fight was over. They did not show mercy. Survivors were hunted like animals. He studied the girl again. She looked too small, too fragile to invent such a story. The way she trembled, the way her voice cracked with fear, it was real. Still, he could not let his guard down. "Why should I trust you, Lyra?" he asked, stopping a few steps behind her. "I don't know you. For all I know, this could be a trap." Lyra froze. For a moment, silence pressed between them. Then she turned, her face pale and her lips trembling. "You think I would lie?" she whispered. Her small hands clenched into fists. "I am just a child. My mother is all I have. If she dies, I have no one. Her voice broke into sobs. She fell to her knees in the dirt, covering her face with her hands. The sound of her crying cut through the still night. Daniel felt something heavy stir inside him. He had seen many things in war. He had seen soldiers die. He had seen cities burn. But the sound of a child's tears was something different. Something he could not ignore. He lowered his rifle slightly and stepped closer. "Get up, Lyra," he said firmly but not unkind. "Crying won't help her. If you want me to save your mother, you need to stay strong. Show me the way. But you have to tell me everything. Do you understand?" Lyra lifted her head. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but her eyes burned with a small spark of determination. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I will tell you everything." She stood again, unsteady but brave. Together they walked closer to the broken starship. Its shadow swallowed them as they entered the wreckage. The metal creaked under their feet and sparks jumped from broken wires. Inside, the air was hotter, thick with smoke. The walls were covered with strange alien symbols, glowing faintly. Lyra touched one of the symbols with her hand as they passed. "What do these mean?" Daniel asked. Lyra lowered her head. "Warnings," she said softly. "The hunters mark the places they search. It means they will return soon." Daniel's eyes narrowed. That meant they had little time. As they moved deeper, Lyra began to speak again, her voice shaking. "My mother. She is not just my mother. She is important. To my people, she is—" Lyra stopped, searching for the right word. "A leader. If she dies, my people will have no hope. That is why the hunters want her dead. If they kill her, we are finished." Daniel stopped walking. He stared at her for a long moment. "A leader?" he repeated. Lyra nodded. Her eyes glistened with fear and pride. "Yes, she is our queen." The word echoed in Daniel's head. Queen. This was bigger than he thought. Saving one alien life was already dangerous. But saving a queen? That meant drawing the attention of enemies far stronger than he wanted. He clenched his jaw. His mind screamed at him to turn back, to leave before it was too late. But his heart, heavy and human, told him something else. Lyra noticed his hesitation. She stepped closer, tugging at his arm with her small hand. "Please," she whispered. "You are human. You are strong, my people. We always believed humans could be different from the hunters. Prove it. Please save her." Daniel looked down at her. Her silver eyes were wide and desperate, like a candle flickering in a storm. For a moment he remembered another time long ago when he had lost someone who begged for help he could not give. The memory cut deep. He shook his head, pushing the thought away. "All right," he said finally. But you must do exactly as I say. No running, no hiding. Stay close to me." Lyra's face lit with fragile hope. She nodded quickly. "Yes, I promise." A sound suddenly echoed through the wreckage. A metallic screech, then heavy footsteps. The ground trembled slightly. Lyra gasped. "They are coming!" she whispered in terror. Daniel raised his rifle, his eyes sharp and ready. The shadows at the end of the corridor shifted and glowing red eyes appeared in the dark. The hunters had returned. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra, his voice calm but cold. "Stay behind me!" Lyra clutched his arm tightly, her small body trembling. For the first time since the war began, she felt the smallest spark of safety. But the danger was only beginning. The hunter's footsteps echoed like drums in the dark corridor. Daniel held his rifle tight, his body tense, his eyes sharp. Behind him, Lyra clung to his arm, her breath fast and shallow. The red glow of the hunter's eyes flickered in the distance. Their heavy shapes moved closer, slow but unstoppable. Daniel knew he could not fight them all in such a narrow space. "Run," he whispered. Lyra's eyes widened. "But, run!" His voice was low but fierce. They turned and sprinted down a side passage. The floor was littered with broken wires and twisted metal. Sparks jumped under their feet as they ran. The sound of the hunters followed, heavy and sharp like predators chasing prey. Lyra led him deeper into the wreck, through a torn wall that opened into the night. They stumbled out into the burned forest beyond the starship. The trees here were black, their branches sharp and twisted. The ground was covered in ash and the air smelled of smoke and death. The moonlight barely touched the land, leaving everything in long, frightening shadows. Lyra gasped for air, her small chest rising and falling. "They will not stop," she said. "They never stop." Daniel scanned the dark forest. He could feel it too. The hunters were not far. They moved with patience like wolves circling prey. "Which way?" he asked. Lyra pointed with her trembling hand. "Through the forest. There is a cave. If we reach it, we will be safe for a while." Daniel nodded. "Then lead the way." They moved quickly, but every step was heavy with fear. The forest was alive with strange sounds. Cracks in the branches, whispers of wind that sounded too much like voices. Shapes moved in the corner of Daniel's eyes, but when he turned, nothing was there. Lyra walked close to him, her eyes darting everywhere. She whispered softly, as if afraid the shadows could hear her. "This place, it remembers the war. The trees saw everything. Sometimes they show things that are not real." Daniel frowned but said nothing. He kept his rifle ready, his finger near the trigger. His heart beat hard in his chest, not only from fear but from something else, something strange. He felt like the forest itself was watching them. After some time, they came upon the ruins of a village. Small houses made of stone and alien metal stood broken, half buried in ash. Strange markings covered the walls, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Daniel stopped, looking closer. The markings were sharp symbols, cut into the stone like wounds. They glowed with a red light that made his skin crawl. "What do they mean?" he asked. Lyra lowered her head. "It is the mark of the hunters. It says no mercy." Daniel felt anger rise inside him. "They destroy everything, don't they?" Lyra's voice trembled. "They do not only destroy. They take, they feed." Daniel looked at her sharply, but she said no more. Her face was pale, and her lips pressed tight as if she had already said too much. They passed through the village, their footsteps soft on the ash. In one corner, Daniel noticed something, a small toy half buried in the dirt. It was a doll with bright colors faded by fire. Someone's child had dropped it long ago. He picked it up without thinking. Lyra stopped, staring at the doll in his hand. Her silver eyes filled with tears again. "That belonged to my friend," she whispered. She did not survive." Daniel looked at the doll, then placed it gently back on the ground. "I'm sorry," he said softly. They moved on, but the silence grew heavier. The shadows felt closer now, pressing against them. Daniel's chest was tight, his instincts screaming. The hunters were near, then it came, the sound of metal grinding. A deep growl. From the ruins behind them, red eyes glowed once more. "They found us," Lyra gasped. Daniel pulled her behind a fallen tree. He aimed his rifle, ready for a fight. But then something strange happened. The hunters stopped at the edge of the village. They did not enter. They stood still, watching with their glowing eyes, but they did not move closer. Daniel frowned. "Why aren't they following?" Lyra's voice was a whisper. Because of the cave. They fear what sleeps inside. Daniel turned to her sharply. What do you mean, sleeps? But Lyra only shook her head. We must go, please. Her voice was urgent, desperate. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He stood, pulling her forward. Together they ran into the deeper forest, leaving the hunters behind. The ground sloped downward, and soon they reached the mouth of the cave. It was wide, dark, and cold air flowed out like the breath of something ancient. Strange crystals glowed faintly inside, lighting the path with blue and purple light. Lyra stepped in first, her small figure glowing in the strange light. Daniel followed, but his eyes stayed sharp on the shadows. He could not shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far more dangerous than hunters. The cave walls shimmered with crystal veins, each one pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The air was heavy, thick with energy. Daniel felt it against his skin, crawling like static. Lyra whispered, almost to herself, This place is older than my people. It was here before the war. Before the hunters. My mother once said the cave hides secrets no one should wake. Daniel looked at her sharply. Secrets? What kind of secrets? Lyra turned, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the crystal light. The kind that can save us, or destroy us. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. He realized the journey was not only about saving one life. It was about walking into the heart of something ancient, something that even the hunters feared. And as the shadows closed in around them, he understood one thing with chilling clarity. The true danger had only just begun. The cave was silent, too silent. The blue crystals glowed faintly, lighting the path with a ghostly shine. Daniel walked carefully, his rifle in hand. Lyra stayed close, her silver eyes wide, her small fingers clutching the edge of his jacket. For a moment, the silence gave hope. Maybe the hunters would not follow. Maybe the cave would hide them. But then the ground trembled. A low metallic roar rolled through the air, echoing off the cave walls. Daniel froze. His instincts screamed. He turned back toward the cave entrance. There, shapes moving in the darkness. Shadows with red glowing eyes the hunters had followed. Run! Daniel shouted, pulling Lyra's arm. She gasped but obeyed. Her small legs carried her deeper into the cave, stumbling on the uneven ground. Daniel ran beside her, his rifle aimed at the shadows behind. The hunters stepped into the cave. Their armored bodies gleamed faintly in the crystal light. Their eyes burned red and their claws scraped against the stone. Slow, steady, terrifying, Daniel fired. The blast from his rifle filled the cave with light and sound. One hunter staggered back, sparks flying from its armor. But another leapt forward fast as a beast, claws reaching. Go, Lyra! Daniel shouted. He swung his weapon like a club, striking the hunter across the face. The creature roared, stumbling back, but more were coming. Lyra screamed. This way! She darted toward a narrow passage between the crystals. Daniel followed, firing as he moved. The blasts echoed like thunder, shaking loose dust from the ceiling. The hunters howled, their claws scraping stone as they gave chase. The passage twisted sharply, the walls glowing with strange patterns in the crystal. The light seemed alive, pulsing with each step. Lyra stumbled, and Daniel caught her arm, pulling her forward. Behind them, the hunters' footsteps grew louder, faster. Daniel turned and fired again. The shot exploded against the crystals, shattering them. For a moment, the cave filled with blinding blue light. The hunters roared in pain, shielding their eyes. Daniel grabbed Lyra and ran. Keep moving. They burst into a wider chamber, the ceiling high above, the floor covered in sharp crystal shards. At the center, a pool of glowing water shimmered, casting strange reflections on the walls. Lyra stopped, panting hard. This is the heart of the cave, she whispered. Daniel glanced around quickly. Is there another exit? Lyra shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, only back. The hunters were coming. Their growls echoed down the passage, closer with every second. Daniel clenched his jaw. They were trapped. He looked at the glowing pool. The water rippled without wind, glowing brighter as the hunters approached. Daniel didn't trust it, but he had no choice. Stay behind me, he said. The first hunter charged into the chamber. Its claws gleamed, its eyes burning red. Daniel fired, the shot slamming into its chest. The hunter staggered but kept moving. Another followed, then another. 3 hunters filled the chamber, circling. Their growls echoed like thunder. Lyra cried out, clutching Daniel's arm. We cannot fight them! Daniel's eyes scanned the chamber quickly. He needed something, anything. His gaze stopped on the pool. The glow was brighter now, almost alive. The water moved in waves, though nothing touched it. The hunters stepped closer. One raised its claw, ready to strike. Daniel made a choice. He grabbed Lyra, pulling her toward the pool. "Trust me," he shouted. "No!" Lyra gasped, terrified. "The pool is dangerous." But there was no time. The hunter swung its claw, the air hissing as it cut through. Daniel leapt with Lyra into the glowing water. For a moment the world disappeared. The water was not water. It was light, blinding endless light. Daniel felt as if he was falling and flying at the same time. The sound of the hunters vanished, replaced by whispers. Thousands of voices speaking in a language he could not understand. Lyra screamed, clutching him tighter. Then, just as suddenly, it ended. They fell hard onto stone. Daniel gasped for air, blinking. They were still in the cave, but different. The chamber was gone. The crystals here were brighter, sharper, and strange patterns glowed across the walls. Lyra sat up, trembling. "The pool. It moved us," she whispered in awe. "It took us deeper. Too deep." Daniel stood, his rifle ready. "At least we're alive," he said, but his relief was short. A sound rose behind them. Not the hunter's growl, something older, heavier. The ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra's face turned pale. "No, not this, not now." Daniel turned toward the sound. A massive shadow shifted in the darkness, far larger than the hunters. Two glowing eyes opened. Blue, not red. Ancient. Watching. Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "This is why the hunters feared the cave. Something lives here, something even they cannot face." Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. His heart pounded. The chase was not over. It had only led them into something far more dangerous. The cave shook as the great shadow moved. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the crystal walls pulsed with strange light. Daniel stood still, his rifle raised, his finger tight on the trigger. Beside him, Lyra clung to his arm, her small body trembling. The creature's eyes glowed blue, deep and ancient. They were not like the hunter's red eyes. These eyes were calm but heavy, as if they carried the weight of centuries. The ground rumbled with each slow movement. "What is that?" Daniel whispered. Lyra's face was pale. Her silver eyes reflected the blue glow. "It is the Guardian," she said softly. "It was here before my people, before the hunters. My mother once told me, it protects the secrets of this world." The Guardian's massive shape stepped forward. Its body was covered in stone-like armor, but strange energy flowed between the cracks, glowing faintly. It looked like a creature born from both earth and light. Daniel's instincts told him to fire, to fight. But something held him back. The creature did not strike. It only watched. Lyra stepped forward, her voice shaking. "We are not enemies," she whispered to the beast. "We only want to save her." The Guardian tilted its head slowly, as if listening. The crystals around them glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with its movements. Then with a deep rumble, the creature stepped aside. A path opened. Daniel frowned. "It wants us to go," Lyra nodded quickly. "It knows why we are here." Daniel lowered his rifle but did not relax. He placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Stay close." They moved along the new passage, the Guardian's glowing eyes watching until they disappeared deeper into the cave. The air grew colder. The light of the crystals dimmed. Strange whispers echoed faintly, though no one else was there. Daniel tried to focus, but questions burned in his mind. Finally he stopped. "Lyra," he said firmly, "you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. Why are the hunters after you? Why is your mother so important?" Lyra stopped walking. Her small hands clenched together. She looked down at the ground, her voice quiet. "I told you before. My mother is our queen." Daniel nodded. "You said that. But that doesn't explain why the hunters are so desperate to kill her." Lyra hesitated. Her lips trembled. Then she lifted her head, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the crystal light. "Because my mother is more than a queen. She is the last voice of the Source." Daniel frowned. "The Source?" Lyra nodded.
"It is the heart of my people."
"The Source is what gives us life, what binds us to this world. Long ago the hunters tried to take it, but they could not. So now they kill anyone who carries its voice. My mother, she is the last one." Daniel's chest tightened. He did not understand all of it, but he understood enough. If Lyra's mother died, her people would lose their last connection to whatever this Source was. They would lose their future. Lyra's voice cracked with pain. "That is why they hunt her. If she is gone, my people will fade. We will be nothing. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. His human heart ached at the weight of her words. He thought of Earth, of his own people. If someone had tried to erase them, to cut their very heart away, would he not fight the same way? He sighed heavily. All right, then we save her, no matter what. Lyra's eyes widened, shining with both hope and fear. You mean it? Daniel gave a small nod. I've come too far to walk away now. Before Lyra could answer, the ground shook again. A distant roar echoed through the cave, not the Guardian, but the hunters. They had found another way in. Lyra gasped. They will not stop. Daniel grabbed her hand firmly. Then neither will we. They ran deeper into the cave. The air grew hotter, and the walls opened into a wide chamber. At the center lay a massive piece of wreckage, the broken body of a starship torn open by fire. And beneath it, barely visible, a figure lay pinned. Lyra cried out, "Mother!" Daniel froze. The woman under the wreck was weak but alive. Her skin glowed faintly like Lyra's, her hair silver and tangled. Even crushed beneath the wreckage, she carried an aura of strength, of dignity. Lyra ran forward, falling to her knees beside her. Tears streamed down her face as she held her mother's hand. I brought help. Please, stay with me. The Queen's eyes opened slowly. They were the same silver as Lyra's, but dim, fading. She whispered something, her voice almost gone. Lyra leaned close. What did you say, Mother? The Queen's lips moved again. Daniel could barely hear the words. The human was always meant to come. Daniel's chest tightened. He stepped closer, his mind racing. What did she mean? How could she know him? But there was no time for questions. The sound of claws scraping stone echoed through the chamber. The hunters were coming, closer and closer. Daniel looked at the wreckage pinning the Queen. It was massive, far too heavy for Lyra. Even with his strength, it would take everything he had. He tightened his grip on his rifle, then slung it across his back. He placed both hands on the wreckage. His muscles screamed as he pushed, every nerve burning. The metal groaned but did not move. Lyra's sobs filled the chamber. Please, please, save her. Daniel clenched his teeth. He pushed harder, every part of him straining. His vision blurred, sweat dripping down his face. The wreck shifted slightly. A small crack of air reached the Queen. Behind them, the hunters' growls grew louder. The red glow of their eyes appeared in the passage. Daniel roared, his whole body shaking as he pushed harder, harder still. The metal screamed, shifting another inch. And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. He was no longer just fighting to save one alien queen. He was fighting to protect a people, to stand against something greater than himself. The hunters entered the chamber, their claws gleaming. The fight for survival had begun. The chamber shook with the sound of claws. The hunters were here. Their red eyes glowed in the shadows, their armored bodies scraping against the crystal walls. Growls echoed like thunder. Daniel's hands trembled as he pushed against the wreckage. The Queen's body was pinned beneath heavy metal, her breath shallow. Lyra knelt beside her, sobbing, clutching her mother's hand. Hold on, Daniel growled, his teeth clenched. His arms shook, muscles screaming in pain. The wreck groaned but barely moved. One of the hunters stepped into the chamber, tall and terrible. Its claws gleamed, its face hidden behind a mask of black metal. It hissed, the sound sharp and inhuman. Daniel dropped the wreckage and swung his rifle. The shot cracked through the air, blasting into the hunter's chest. Sparks exploded and the creature staggered back, roaring in fury. But more came. 3, 4, 5 hunters spilled into the chamber, their eyes burning like fire. Lyra screamed, clutching her mother tighter. Daniel, they'll kill us! Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to run. But the Queen's weak eyes looked at him, her lips forming words he could barely hear. Protect her. Protect Lyra. The hunters advanced. Daniel fired again, the blast echoing like thunder. One hunter fell, but the others spread out, circling like wolves. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra and the Queen, his rifle raised. You'll have to go through me. The largest hunter roared and charged. Daniel fired, but the creature was fast. It swung its claw, knocking the rifle from his hands. The weapon clattered across the stone floor. Daniel stumbled back. The hunter raised its claw to strike. In that instant, Lyra screamed, her silver eyes glowing. The crystals in the cave pulsed brighter, as if answering her cry. A shockwave of light burst out, throwing the hunters back for a moment. Daniel stared at her in shock. What did you... Lyra shook her head, tears falling. I don't know. The source. It heard me. The hunters recovered quickly, their growls shaking the chamber. Daniel knew they would not stop. He grabbed a sharp shard of crystal from the ground, holding it like a blade. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. The hunters attacked again. Daniel met them head-on. He slashed with the crystal shard, sparks flying as it cut into the hunter's armor. The creature roared in pain. Another leapt at him. Daniel rolled aside, stabbing the shard deep into its leg. The hunter screamed, collapsing, but they were too many. One claw struck his chest, tearing his armor. Pain seared through him. He gasped, but he did not fall. He swung the shard again, driving it into the hunter's throat. Blood sprayed. The creature fell. Daniel staggered back, panting, his vision blurring. His body ached, but he forced himself to stand. Lyra's voice rose, trembling but strong. "Daniel, you cannot fight them all!" He glanced at the queen, still pinned, her breath faint. He knew Lyra was right. He could not win this by strength alone. The hunters circled, growling, waiting for the kill. Daniel's eyes darted to the wreckage. If he could free the queen, maybe she could help. Maybe her power, the source, was the only way. He threw the shard aside and ran to the wreckage. His hands gripped the twisted metal again. He pushed with everything he had. His muscles screamed, his wounds burned, but he refused to stop. "Come on," he roared, his voice echoing in the chamber. The wreck shifted. Slowly, painfully, it lifted. Just enough, the queen gasped, free at last. Lyra pulled her away quickly, holding her close, but Daniel had no strength left. The wreck crashed back down, throwing him to the ground. His arms shook, his chest heaving. The hunters roared, furious. They charged again. Before they could strike, the queen lifted her head. Her silver eyes glowed, brighter than Lyra's ever had. The crystals in the chamber blazed with light, blinding the hunters. Her voice rang out, weak but powerful. "Enough." The hunters froze, their bodies shaking. The light grew stronger, pouring from the queen into the crystals. The ground trembled, the air alive with energy. Daniel shielded his eyes. Lyra held her mother's hand, tears streaming down her face. The queen's voice filled the chamber. "You will not take my people. You will not take my daughter." The light exploded. The hunters screamed, their bodies burning in the blaze. One by one they collapsed, their armor shattering, their red eyes fading into darkness. Silence. The light dimmed. The queen slumped into Lyra's arms, weak but alive. Lyra sobbed, pressing her face against her mother's chest. "You're safe. You're safe now." Daniel staggered to his feet, his body broken but standing. He looked at the fallen hunters, then at the queen. Her eyes met his. She whispered, her voice barely audible. "You were always meant to find us, human." "The source called you," Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to ask what she meant, but her eyes closed again, her body weak. Lyra looked at Daniel, her face wet with tears. "You saved her. You saved us." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, she saved herself. I just bought her time." But deep inside he knew this was not over. The hunters were only the beginning. Something greater, something darker was waiting beyond this cave, and he was now part of it. The chamber was quiet at last. The hunters lay broken on the crystal floor, their red eyes dark, their bodies lifeless. The glow from the walls slowly faded back to a soft blue. The echo of the queen's power still lingered, humming through the cave like the heartbeat of the world itself. Daniel stood in the silence, his body trembling with exhaustion. His chest burned from wounds, his arms heavy from strain. Every breath felt like fire, but he forced himself to stay upright. He could not fall. Not yet. Lyra knelt beside her mother, clutching her tightly. Tears streamed down her small face, but her silver eyes shone with hope for the first time. "You are alive," she whispered. "I thought I lost you." The queen's weak hand lifted, resting on her daughter's cheek. Her lips trembled, her voice faint but warm. "You saved me, little one. You brought him." Her gaze turned to Daniel. Even weak and pale, her eyes carried weight, like they could see more than the present. "Human," she said softly. "The source called you here. You must understand, this was never chance." Daniel frowned, his jaw tight. He wanted to argue, to say he had stumbled into this by mistake. But something deep inside him knew she was right. From the moment he heard Lyra's cry on the battlefield, he had felt it, like an invisible hand pulling him forward. Lyra looked between them, confusion on her face. "What do you mean, Mother? Why him?" The queen coughed, her breath ragged. "Because he carries something our people lost long ago. A fire in his spirit. The courage to stand when all hope is gone. The hunters fear strength like his, because it cannot be broken. Daniel shifted uneasily. He was no hero. He was just a man with scars, carrying regrets too heavy to speak. But the Queen's words cut through him, heavy as truth. Before he could answer, the ground trembled again. Not as strong as before, but enough to make the crystals flicker. Daniel's grip tightened on his rifle. More hunters? He asked quickly. The Queen shook her head slowly. No, something worse. A chill spread through the chamber. The air grew heavy, pressing on their skin like a weight. From deep within the cave, far beyond the glowing walls, came a sound, low, deep, and unnatural. Not claws, not growls. A voice. Daniel froze. He could not understand the words, but the sound crawled into his mind, filling it with dread. Lyra clung tighter to her mother, her small body shaking. It is them, she whispered. The ones who send the hunters. The Queen nodded weakly. Yes, the hunters are only tools. The true enemy is awake now. They know you are here. Daniel felt his heart pound. He had faced death before. He had fought battles where survival was a miracle. But this sound, this presence, it was different. Darker, colder, like the cave itself was afraid. He stepped closer to the Queen and Lyra. Then we move. We can't stay here. The Queen tried to rise, but her body was too weak. She fell back, pain etched across her face. I cannot walk, she whispered. Daniel crouched, slipping one arm under her shoulders. He lifted her carefully, his body screaming in protest. She was light, but his wounds made every step heavy. Still, he carried her. Lyra walked close, her hand clutching Daniel's sleeve. Her silver eyes glistened. Will we make it out? She asked softly. Daniel forced a thin smile. We'll try. That's all we can do. The three of them moved slowly, deeper into the cave. The whispers followed, growing louder. The crystals dimmed, shadows crawling along the walls as though alive. Finally, they reached a narrow tunnel leading upward. Cool air drifted down from above. An exit. Daniel's chest lifted with relief, but the Queen spoke again, her voice faint but clear. Human, listen carefully. This is not the end. Saving me was only the beginning. The Source chose you for more. Daniel glanced at her. I didn't choose this. Her eyes, glowing faintly, met his. It chose you. They stepped out into the night. The burned forest stretched before them, the sky heavy with smoke and stars. For a brief moment, the silence felt almost peaceful. Daniel lowered the Queen against a fallen log, letting her rest. Lyra sat beside her, holding her hand. The girl looked at Daniel with wide eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You saved her. You saved us. Daniel looked away, his jaw tight. Don't thank me yet. His eyes scanned the forest, every shadow alive with suspicion. In the distance, far beyond the trees, a new light flickered. Not fire, not stars, something colder. A red glow rising into the sky like a signal. The Queen's weak voice drifted to him. They know where we are now. The true war begins. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. His body ached, his mind screamed for rest, but his spirit refused to break. He looked at the glow on the horizon and whispered to himself, then let them come. The camera of the world pulled back, the burned forest, the crashed ships, the wounded Queen, the little alien girl clutching her savior. And beyond, in the endless dark, something vast stirred, watching, waiting. The story was far from over.